Albert Einstein once said, "It is the supreme art of the teacher to awaken joy in creative expression and knowledge." Tonight's artist is the living embodiment of this statement. An academic, a composer, and a performer, Kenyatta Beasley has been dedicated to kindling that spark of individual artistry in his audience and showing them how to let their light shine brightly. After years behind the scenes recording and performing with some of popular music's top acts, he's here tonight to give us a taste of his new music and band. I'm your host, Wes Jackson, and stay right here because in the next hour, we're going to bring you a copious demonstration of musical capacity right here on B-Side. All right. That was serious right there. We need a moment to gather ourselves.
Let's all take a deep breath together.
Exactly. Take a big in through the nose, out through the mouth. Mr. Beasley.
Yes.
Maybe first, maybe we should introduce, we know who you are, but introduce maybe the rest of the fellas.
On tenor saxophone, how about a big warm round of applause for Mr. Keith Loftus on tenor saxophone. As I stumble on myself. Alvester Garnett on the drums. Mr. John Chen on Nord Electro Lead 73 stage piano. And Corcoran Holt on the bass.
So I think we're gonna talk about how you all got together maybe a little day later. But let's start with you. Where you from? You not from New York?
Not from New York. I'm originally from born and raised in New Orleans, Louisiana.
Right on, right on. Yeah. Where all of this started.
Right, well, it's the birthplace of jazz. Naturally.
So, and how did you get started playing? And how early was it?
Well, the story has it that my dad's a trumpet player. So there's always been like a trumpet in my house for my entire life. From me living here or just me being down there. There's always been some form of a trumpet laying around the house. So when I was 3 years old, supposedly I went up and grabbed the trumpet and started playing it. And from that day on, I've been, trying to figure this thing out since then.
Yeah. Were you like waiting in the wings at some of your father's gigs?
No.
Did he play professional or just around the house?
No, he was a professional trumpet player, but I think the way that he tells the story, I was playing with some blocks or something and walked in and hear the note, like, what is that? What is that?
Oh, and you hit the note.
And it was like, the most basic note. If you just put a horn in your face. And I was recruited from that moment on. And I'm like, man, this is a blessing. And playing the trumpet, sometimes a curse sometimes.
Right, right. So did he teach you or did you start?
My dad was my first teacher.
Okay.
So for like maybe the first, between the ages of 3 and I want to say like 10 to 11 years old, we had a father-son duo that used to just play around the streets of New Orleans. And, so it's me all around the French Quarter meeting older musicians, the Ellis Marcelluses, the Harold Baptiste, and, like now having these other father figures in music to look up to.
Right. Is your father still with us?
Yeah, he's still with us. He's down in Houston, still playing.
Okay. What does he think about the band?
Hopefully he's watching right now.
Anything you want to say to
Hopefully
Dad,
he's
right?
watching
One of
right
these
now.
cameras?
And he likes the band. Yeah,
I can't see how he couldn't right now. So I see here now. What is this? You playing a young Louis Armstrong?
So like one of the
in the music, was it the Satchmo the musical? Was that what it was?
Well,
I have that right?
So at the age of 9 or 10, I want to say 9, I auditioned for the role of young Louis Armstrong in a touring musical called Satchmo, America's Musical Legend. So out of maybe like 2,000 kids, from a national search, they chose me to play young Louis Armstrong. So that was actually my first time being on the road at like 9 years old with all these great musicians. And in the show, Harry Connick Jr. He was the first piano player in the show. So he was from New Orleans, and we kind of like connected and hooked up. So.
Is this sort of before he became?
This is like Harry Connick right out of high school, like first moving to New York. So he was like the first piano player for that show.
So what was that like? That's gotta be mad. I mean, I can't imagine.
Well, it was different because I was so used to playing a trumpet. Now I had to start acting. And to be 9 and you're in the 4th grade, get on the airplane, come to New York, have to figure out, memorize the script, and now you're a SAG member all of a sudden. I'm like, and you're trying to figure out, well, what's my next line? So it was a definite transition because I think they wanted me because I could play some trumpet. It was from New Orleans, but they saw some acting potential. So that was actually my first acting gig.
Right. Was your dad with you, or were you?
He was escorting me because you just can't let a 9-year-old.
I would certainly hope not.
So he was, all the cities, man. He just dropped what he was doing to come and make sure that, I had a successful run.
So I just want to talk a little bit more about New Orleans because, I'm a New York guy. I'm kind of like a hip hop guy. Mm-hmm. This is where hip hop started. New Orleans is where jazz started. Right. So what's it like, sort of being a young jazz player? Is it highly competitive? Is it just sort of in the air that you breathe? Is Is everybody walking around with horns at a young age, or I just get a snapshot?
You know what? Everything you said is true. They're just kids with instruments.
Yeah.
So, like for example, when I was in high school, I used to remember I used to take public transportation to school. So you get off the bus and you would just see kids with like a tenor saxophone with no case, just walking down the street, and it was weird. It was weird because it was common just to see some guy with a snare drum.
Yeah.
You know, and so the music is literally all around you. And down there, like, kids start playing at like 2, 3 years old. So you have all these musical families as well. Like, you have like the Marsalises, the Jordans, all these different people. So as far as it being competitive, as far as anybody playing trumpet, it's really competitive.
Right.
So it's because the spirit of Louis Armstrong just permeates the entire city. So as soon as you get off the airplane, you can just kind of feel like, is that Louis Armstrong? And actually, I think that's the first thing you see when you get off at the airport. There's a big mural of Louis Armstrong, like as this angel in the wings looking over everybody in jazz.
Yeah, it's so beautiful to keep your legacy. But real quick, before we get into the next couple songs, your high school, was it New Orleans Center of Creative Arts?
The New Orleans Center for Creative Arts. It's the same high school that, let me see, that Wendell Pierce went to.
Okay.
It's basically LaGuardia, the LaGuardia Performing Arts, but it's in New Orleans.
Right.
So it really got famous because the first students were Ellis and Bradford Marcellus.
The very first.
Right, because their dad, Ellis Marcellus, was the teacher there.
Okay, gotcha.
So it was became Whidden, Bradford, Terrence Blanchard,
Wow.
Donald Harrison, and Nicholas Payton, and all these, like, right now it's like Trombone Shorty.
Okay.
Like, so we have all those graduates that have kind of like, we run the world.
Yeah, evidently. And I know we're going to talk, we're going to get into, I think we're going to do 2 songs to get y'all back in the groove, and then maybe we'll talk about where you connected with some of this crew.
Okay.
Sound good?
Cool.
So what we're going to hear, what are the 2 songs we're going to get into?
The first song that we're going to get into is a song called Chiquito Loco. It's written by, all the material that we're actually playing has been written by Frank Foster, and we'll get into that soon.
Yes, sir.
So the first song is going to be Chiquito Loco, and the next one will be called Simone.
Sounds good. Let's go.
Yeah.
Y'all went somewhere else on that second song.
Yeah.
John Coltrane walked in here at some point.
There he
walked
is right
back out. You can see him going out the front door. So that was, the first one was Chiquito Loco, right? Get
Chiquito
that right?
Loco.
And the second one was?
Simone.
So tell us about you saying the good brother who composed those songs and I guess everything
So
we're going to rock tonight.
After my first taste of coming to New York at 9 or 10 years old, you start to feed off the energy of the city. So by that point, I didn't want to be in New Orleans anymore. My whole focus was to move to New York when I turned 18 and to go to school up here and figure out, how do I compare against some of the world's best musicians, just like everybody else up here. So when I first got here, I enrolled in the new school, and that's where I first met Keith. So it's been over 20 years now that we've known each other, and our first ensemble teacher was Frank Foster. So being from the small New Orleans bubble that I was living in, I'm like, well, who's this guy, Frank Foster? and I'll be honest, I had no idea who he was until I went to the person who helped to run the new school, the Manor School of Music, and he says, man, you don't know who Frank Foster is? And he gave me one of those looks, like, you don't know.
Like, what's wrong with you?
And I became that guy, like, you don't know who he is? So the more that we got to know him, he became like a mentor to us. And he was like, I think we first met him as he was leaving the Count Basie Orchestra. He took over as a director of the Count Basie Orchestra right after Count Basie died.
Wow.
So in order to kind of restore the band to its glory days, they brought him, one of the first stars of the band, back to run the band again. So after he was done, he was always into like teaching, and we first met him as our ensemble director at the new school. So he put Keith and myself in like most of his bands, and we got to tour the world with him. And it's the ultimate paid internship.
Yeah. Right, I was about to say, so you guys were students playing, not professional, quote unquote.
Well, you're professional students.
Professional students, right. So so you're going where? We're talking like worldwide, Japan, Germany,
Europe,
stuff like that. Wow. And what was that like?
It's great.
Yeah.
I mean, I had the opportunity to be in the band and to study with him privately as a saxophonist. So
you would study, you'd be at the new school studying and be like, all right, guys, now it's time. We got some gigs.
Right.
We're going to go out back and forth.
It was literally, the funny thing about music is that your best education comes on the bandstand. Right. Not really in the classroom. We can talk it over as much as we want, but eventually we have to execute those ideas, So being with him, we got to be with all like the great New York musicians. A lot of guys who, people don't really talk about. Because, in jazz, there are only a certain few stars because it is a niche music.
Right.
So even guys like Frank Foster, they'll get overlooked by jazz history no matter what their contributions actually were. But being, for me playing with Frank Foster, man, I got to play with George Benson, play with, Clark Terry, John Faddis, all of these jazz superstars, and me being like 20 years old, I'm like, whoa.
Right.
So, without him, man, it's like that was really my introduction into like the real musicians of New York City.
Right. So are these songs when did the songs that we're listening to tonight, when did he write those? For new or these?
Oh, these are all those songs. Frank passed away in 2011.
Okay.
And the reason I did this record, I was originally teaching at Ohio State University, and ironically, he actually helped me by writing my recommendation letter, for the gig. So once they saw, Frank Foster put his name on this, it was like, oh, right this way.
Right.
So to be at Ohio State, you in theory have to do like some form of research to, people, be promoted, further and further.
Right.
In regards to getting tenure at a university. So the guy who hired me, Dr. Ted McDaniel, said, man, why don't you go and help him write a jazz arranging and composition book, which would require me to fly from Columbus to Chesapeake, Virginia, where he moved to back and forth. So by this point, he already had a stroke, and it didn't really make sense to kind of like get the memories from him and try to like write a book from it. So I was having issues just putting the whole project together because there was so much information that he was just giving me about arranging. How do we put it all in the book? So what happens is that he says, hey, look, why don't you just do a record of some songs that I'd like to have played, my own material. You put the arrangements together, get the band together, and record a record.
Right.
So about a year later, right before he died, he started sending me all these songs that we're playing now. Record this, record this. So now, I'm like holding a torch with this legend who wants you to record a song. So
Right.
we decided to record the songs live right here in Brooklyn at a place called Jazz 966 Fulton Street. It's actually down the block.
Yeah, about to
right.
say that got to be right up the way.
It's literally down the block. So, you know, we wanted to do some of these songs because, as you can hear, all these songs have a certain amount of character to them.
Yeah.
So, you know, we wanted to have an audience that, for the ones that you want to get up and dance to, they got up and danced. But for the more sophisticated crowd who wants to, we want to.
Is that us? Are we the sophisticated?
Well,
crowd?
I mean, this is a TV audience. We're going to mess up this camera blocking, man, if everybody starts getting up and dancing. Let's keep it together. Let's keep it together. So no, we had to find the right audience. You can do this at a Birdland or somewhere like that, but you can lose like the audience participation that jazz needs, because really jazz is all about the energy of the audience. And over there, they really enjoy life, love to listen to music, and it was a great place to actually record the record. So, Wynton Marsalis is one of the guests on the record, Mark Whitfield, a lot of other jazz legends, Keith, Albester's playing drums. So, you know, we got a great band, and we lucked out, and everything, all the stars seemed to align.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So yeah, what's the name of the album that?
The name of the record is going to be the Kenyatta Beasley Septet presents the Frank Foster Songbook.
Okay, sounds good. So all right, well I wanted to get into the next wave of your career going to NYU and scoring, but let's get into some more songs and then we'll come back and talk about sort of the next wave. So let's get into one more and then we'll jump back. What are we gonna do?
Yeah, what we're gonna do now, we're gonna feature Keith Loftus. He's gonna play a beautiful ballad written by Frank Foster and called Gray Thursday.
All right.
1, 2.
Even you got to clap on that. Y'all got to clap for that one. That
I'm
was
gonna give it up. I'm
absolutely
gonna give it up. Man.
That was absolutely beautiful. Great Thursday. Got
Great
that right?
Thursday.
That one, I feel like we all should have just turned the lights down and hugged up on somebody. You right? That's what I felt like we were inappropriate to stand in here. You know? But that's a beautiful song, beautifully. I mean, that one blows you away. So before, we have some other questions, but it makes you think about this sort of the nature of the performances, right? Does it ever sort of bother you that this sort of spectator sport, we're just sort of sitting here and watching you? When there's so much emotion, it's like, I feel like we should be doing something, right? We should be dancing, we should be moving. This idea of jazz is like us sort of standing and watching.
I have theories.
Does it bother you? Or?
I have theories.
Briefly, because we do want to get into the rest of the song.
Well,
that's the whole thesis at Ohio State right there.
All right. Jazz is really a celebratory music by nature, all right? Coming from New Orleans, it's really supposed to be something where it's audience participation, people up and dancing, people contributing to the music. So, I mean, really, that's what I was saying before. Like, when you have an active crowd who feels like they're part of the band, it's almost like this osmosis, this relationship to both sides. And I'm used to people getting up, yelling, screaming, celebrating, letting you know how they feel. Hey, man, you need a drink? You need a drink? All right. Blah, blah, blah. And it's used. I mean, in New Orleans, you got to keep in mind, it's a very festive thing, even when the person dies. Right. That they're buried, and then on their way back from the cemetery, we having a party again to actually celebrate your life. Right. So, I mean, really, that's what I'm so used to jazz being that way, to be in New York and have it to be where it's in this. Oh, yeah.
Right. So that's when it changes. It changes when it comes up here. It's a little bit more big business.
As the music moved north, it got a little more, sophisticated. Yeah. And it became like, I guess, of more of like a European-based thing, where it's like you're going to the opera, classical music, and you sit and you observe it that way. But to me, man, look, if you feel it, tap your foot, get up and dance. Let's make some noise. But you can't do that in every establishment, obviously.
Right. Well, there's even laws against that in some places. Where you can't even dance.
Yeah. So I mean, that's how I actually feel about jazz. It's really audience involvement, man. They're part of the band too. So.
Right, because that's why I just feel you could feel the emotion.
Right,
absolutely.
And I feel almost awkward not participating and y'all talking to each. I don't know. You go into another space. He's talking to somebody, and it's beautiful, right? And all the silent communication you guys are living and breathing, regardless of where
usually
we
on the
are.
bandstand is me just screaming directions. Hey, beat, no, beat.
Is that normally how it is?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful, but everybody's moving in a sort of right. You are conducting the orchestra. It's all as one sort of movement.
Right.
But let's just get back to it. So you come back up in here because I want to talk a little bit about your career scoring films, right? Because then after you go to New School, you go to NYU. Is this before you get the job at Ohio State?
This is everything about me teaching is relatively new. I want to say like starting in 2009,
Okay.
a few years ago. But I did like a year and a half on the road with Lauryn Hill. So that was right around the time she released the record, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill.
Okay.
I actually had the opportunity to actually work with her and the Fugees for a brief period of time before they dissolved. And so she brought some of the same members of the horn section to work with her band for the Miseducation tour. So, once you start seeing the difference between like hip hop and jazz, you're like, wait a second, these hip hop guys got some money.
Is that the difference? I was about to, what is it?
So you start to kind of like lean in that direction and like, you know what, yeah, let me.
Those session gigs get a little.
Yeah, look, you start, the session gigs are a little bit different. I mean, because, you got to keep in mind, man, like I said, jazz is a very niche music. It's very sophisticated music, and hip hop, oh man, that's like, right now it's for the people. So at that point, we were, that's when like Bad Boy was just like starting out. I mean, when I moved to Brooklyn, I used to live on Washington and Gates, and I used to see Biggie all the time.
Yeah, I live right near there.
Yeah, St. James and that area. So you would see, it's like I'm playing jazz and I'm doing these hip hop gigs and everything, starts to work together. So after that, you start to understand that being a musician, and that's for all of us, we always need to find ways to diversify our portfolio as far as how we're going to make income. Because sometimes you might have a really great year. Sometimes you might have a bad year.
Yeah.
So I started to get off into like just production. And I had a roommate, Derek Prosper, who was I'm getting to the film scoring stuff now.
Take your time, brother. It's your work.
No, so he actually, that was my first taste of doing music production and making beats. So he was an A&R for G Unit Records. So I'm figuring out how to copy hip hop stuff and coming up with beats and stuff as just another way just to make some more money and but I have a genuine affection for hip hop as it is. So as that begins to progress, I remember talking to Terrence Blanchard and he was talking about the work that he was doing. And I'm saying, you know what? Film scoring sounds pretty
I
hip.
see.
And I said, let me take all this information and see if I can like just, throw some musicality and some film. So I went to NYU, studied film scoring, and I started to get film scoring work, which is totally different because that was not part of the plan.
Right. So what is it, just before we get into the next song, what is the what was the new skill you had to learn for film scoring? Right. What is the angle? Because I think we all know what it is, but then we don't know what it is.
Well,
so what is it?
Coming from a jazz background, as you guys can already hear, there's a lot of notes involved sometimes.
Right.
In film, it's not about your notes. It's all about creating an atmosphere and mood that's really just another character that's being used to support the moving, the moving images on the screen. Right. Not really about your musicianship. It's not really about how great you do things. You're now learning how to be the person in the background to give support to something else. And I was totally fine doing that. Like, okay, I mean, because I always wanted to be like, to a certain point, like more of a behind the scenes kind of person, so that's,
right.
Film's going. So.
Wow, that's great. Well, I could sit here for hours, but we here to listen to you, not listen to me. So what's the next one we're going to get into?
The next song that we're going to play is what we call an American jazz samba.
Oh,
this
wow.
It's called Sadagi Alto.
Okay, right on. Yeah. That's the joint. That's the joint we heard in the sound check.
Yeah.
That
Right,
got me
right,
stuck right there. That's the way
It's a party vibe, man. I'm telling you, it's like a party vibe.
yeah. Well, listen, we're going to have to get out of here in a little bit. We're going to say goodbye to everybody, hopefully get into one more before we get out of here. But that was an extraordinary delivery of musicianship and presentation. Thank you, Kenyatta and the band, for gracing us with your presence and your multi-dimensional compositions and allowing us to really experience the essence of jazz. You can follow Kenyatta on Instagram and Twitter at Kenyatta Beasley. I'm your host, Wes Jackson. I hope you enjoyed this time with us. Be sure to go back and check out past episodes of B-Side anytime at youtube.com/BRIC TV. And be sure to come back here every Thursday for more of the best music in Brooklyn. Now, Kenyatta, if you will, if we have time, can we get one more before we get out of here?
Post show.
Actually, wait, sorry.
Oh.
Wait more. After we say goodbye to the people at home,
Oh.
then we're going to come back with you.
For sure.
All right? But thank you guys, everybody. We'll see you next week.